Hello, welcome. I know about 70% of you folks, you're struggling with multiple choice questions. At least that's what I've seen. So it could be picking the right headings, it could be finding what the, what the main idea or the theme in the passage is, stuff like that. This video, it's all about that. Let's have a look. So when we talk about multiple choice questions, first you gotta think, what do they test you? What do they want to know? What you know, right? First of all, it's a recognition abilities. What it means is they want to know how well you can recognize either an idea in the passage or the information from the question, if that's in the passage or not. That's number one. Second, what they want to also test you is your ability to understand the main ideas versus details or small sections in the passages. So what they might do is give you a question and then ask you is this there in the passage or not? Or what the answer might be to the whole meaning of the passage. So stuff like that, those questions, that's kind of what they really want to test you there. So it's just basically your understanding of the language itself. That's what they want to know, right? Number two, so what do you need to do? Good question, right? So you might be thinking, well, that makes sense. That's what they want to know. What do I have to do to make sure that I get the good grade that I want? First of all, read the instructions carefully. When you look at the question paper, read the instructions, see what it says, and then follow those. A lot of times people don't do that, they lose points. Second, the general ideas of passage. Now this is essential. When you get the passage, quickly skim through it if you can. That's one strategy to do this. So skim through the passage and see what it really means. What is it about? Get a general understanding of what the idea, what the question is. It actually helps you understand what the questions are or the keywords in it. So it helps you there. And then of course, there's a couple other things that you want to read before you start answering the questions. Now, number three, that's reading the question carefully. If you don't read the questions carefully, that's going to be a little bit of an issue because you don't know what to answer or how to answer, right? So focus on that. Number four, once you've done the reading, once you skim through the passage, once you've read the question, now try to guess the location where the answer might be. And the guessing part, it involves skimming and scanning. So that's two techniques that you have to focus on when answering these questions. Skimming and scanning. Skimming is basically reading quickly through the passage. Scanning is looking for specific keywords. So there's that. And then finally, this part, careful comparison. You want to read as fast as you can when you're looking for the location of the answer. Once you've found the location, you want to slow down, read carefully, compare the question, compare the passage, and find the answer. That's essentially what you want to do. So one important tip, the order of the information. So the way the MCQs are is that they flow in the same order as, the passage flows. So question one, if that's in paragraph 1, question 2 will be in paragraph 2 or after where you found the answer. Question 3 will be after where you found the answer. That'll be passage 3 kind of thing, right? So the information flows downways, so does the order of the questions. So keep that in mind when you're looking for answers. Don't waste your time going back and forth between passages. Or paragraphs, I'm sorry. So yeah, there you go. Those are some things you want to keep in mind. Now let's put this information that we just regained, we learned here, into practice. So let's look at a few questions. So let's quickly have a look at the reading passage 3. Now this passage, it's from IELTS Cambridge 17. So reading test 1, passage 3, to catch a king. First of all, look at the title, what the title of the passage is itself, right? Now, when we look at the subheading below here, so that's Anna Key reviews Charles Spencer's book about the hunt for King Charles II during the English Civil War of the 17th century. Next thing, before you get started, the first thing that I like to do is start labeling the passages because this will help you out. So this is passage 1. Now, passage 2 starts here, right? So we'll say passage 2. And now let's look at here. So that's passage 3 right here. Scroll down. This is passage 4 right here. And below is passage 5. And then we have passage 6, the last passage, sorry, paragraph 6. I keep calling them passages. Pardon my mistake there. Let's zoom in a bit so you can see better. And there, that's better. So there we go. Now we know what the passage is about. We know what the title is. We know there are 6 paragraphs and each paragraph is about something. Now, there's one way to kind of go about it. One is you quickly skim through the passage, read the first sentence, the end sentence of each paragraph and see what this is about. That way you can skim through the passage, right? So for the sake of time, we won't do that. Now let's come to question 36 to 40. That's what we're looking at. Now, first of all, the instructions. So we have to choose the correct letter A, B, C, or D from these questions. Write the correct letter in boxes 36 to 40 on your answer sheet. Okay, now we know what we have to do. We have to read the question, compare it with the passage, and see what the answer is, what the correct answer there is, right? So let's look at question number 36. What is the reviewer's main purpose in the first paragraph? So we know we have to look for the answer that's in the first paragraph, and we have to look for the main purpose. So here we have to identify what the main theme of that paragraph is, right? Let's quickly go over to the first paragraph. So since we labeled where the first paragraph is, it's easy for us to kind of scroll back and forth. And of course, when you do this, when you flip pages, it'll be easy for you to locate that because we already know where number 1 is written. It's right here. So we go for that. Now, you've read the question. A lot of times, what you want to do is start by reading the first sentence and the last sentence. Usually the answer can be found somewhere there. Especially when you have to find out what the entire meaning of the question is, start there, and more often than not, you'll find the answer there. So the first one, Charles Spencer's latest book, To Catch a King, tells us the story of the hunt for King Charles II. In 6 weeks after his resounding defeat at the Battle of Worcester in September 1651. And what a story it is. Okay, so there's that. And then finally, for the next 9 years, the penniless and defeated Charles wandered around Europe with only a small group of loyal supporters. Now, so we know what that first paragraph we get a sense of it, what this is about. Now let's look at some answers here. When you read the answers, what you want to do is underline the keywords, okay? Now answer A, what does that say? To describe what happened during the Battle of Worcester. So is that the main purpose of the first paragraph? We don't know. We'll have a look. Now option B is give an account of the circumstances leading to Charles II's escape. Could that be what the first paragraph's main purpose is? Number C, to provide details of the parliamentarian's political views. Some keywords here, parliamentarian, could be that. And number D, to compare Charles II's belief with those of his father. So we have 4 options. Let's quickly have a look which answer we can find here. So in the beginning, it says, the latest book, To Catch a King, tells the story of the hunt for King Charles II in the 6 weeks after his resounding defeat at the Battle of Worcester. So hunt for a king. So something about hunt, right? Do we see anything here? Not so much really, no. But we are seeing something about circumstances leading to Charles II's escape. So we look for Charles II. That's a decent keyword I would pick from here. Let's have a look further down. For the next 9 years, the penniless and defeated Charles wandered around Europe with only a small group of loyal supporters. Okay, not really. We didn't find our answer there. Now let's quickly go a little bit further down. After his father was executed by the parliamentarians in 1649, the young Charles II sacrificed one of the few very principles his father had died for and did a deal with the Scots. No, nothing about the answer here. This was da-da-da-da-da. Now let's go down. Over the following 6 weeks, he managed through a series of heart-pounding close escapes to evade the parliamentarians before seeking refuge in France. Something interesting happening here. Now let's quickly go back to the answer again. It says, to give an account of the circumstances leading to Charles II's escape. So Charles II's escape. And then we see, over the following 6 weeks, he managed through a series of heart-poundingly close escapes. So we get our keyword escapes, and we also talk about him actually making through these ordeals, right? So there we go. Our answer is B. That's how you essentially found your answer, because we're looking for the overall meaning. So literally the first paragraph, the answer was right here in the last couple sentences there. So that's how you find the answer for that. Okay. Now you might be wondering like, oh, what about, I saw the word parliamentarians. So let's look at this answer. To provide details of the parliamentarians' political views. Let's see, are they talking about any of the political views about the parliamentarians in the first paragraph? So let's look here. We found the keyword here is the parliamentarians. After his father was executed by parliamentarians in 1649, the young Charles to sacrifice one of them. Nope, nothing but political view. The two sides finally faced one another at Worcester in West England in 1651. Nope, nothing. After being comprehensively defeated on the meadows outside the city by parliamentarian army, nothing. So really, we didn't find that option here. We couldn't find it anywhere, so it's not the answer. Describe what happened during the Battle of Worcester. Do we get any details about like what exactly happened here? Not so much really, but we see more details about King Charles running away or like escaping through those issues that there might be, right? So there you go. That's how we found the answer for 36. Now let's look at 37. Why does the reviewer include examples of the fugitives' behaviors in the third paragraph? So we basically want to know why, right? Like why did they put examples in there? Number A, to explain how close Charles II came to losing his life. That's number one. B, to suggest that Charles II's supporters were badly prepared. So that's another option. C, to illustrate how the events of the 6 weeks are brought to life. Okay, interesting. And D, to argue that certain aspects are not as well known as they should be. Okay, so we have these four options and they're asking like, why? Why did the reviewer include examples of the fugitives' behavior? Now let's have a look. So third paragraph. There we go, right here, 3. One of the joys of Spencer's book as a result not least of its use of Charles II's own narrative as well as those of his supporters, is just how close the reader gets to action. Okay, interesting. Let's kind of like leave there. Let's kind of go to the last sentence here. So last sentence. Spencer draws out both the humor, such as the preposterous refusal of Charles' friend Henry Wilmot to adopt disguise on the grounds that it was beneath his dignity, yada yada, reveal his supporters. Nothing here. Okay, so the answer is somewhere here, right? So we read the first sentence there. Let's quickly go back. So look here. To illustrate how the events of the 6 weeks are brought to life, number C. That's your answer right there, because we're talking about brought to life, and here they're talking about close the reader gets to the action, and that's why they gave all these options, like all these examples in here, to basically bring the reader as close as they could to the story, and that's your answer. The day-by-day retelling of the fugitives' doings provides delicious details. So, by giving those developments, their author actually brings the reader details about these things, right? So there you go. That's why your answer is C right here. So you might be wondering, like, what about the first one, to explain how Charles II came to losing his life? Well, are we talking about anything about, like, him losing his life? Nothing about life here that I see, right? No keywords, nothing about life, just emotional tension and just other examples. So that's not the option there. To suggest Charles II's supporters were badly prepared. Nothing about preparations whatsoever, nothing about his supporters. Maybe some about saying, like, they weren't willing to adopt him. So, and finally, to argue that certain aspects are not as well known as they should be. Nothing about that either. So there you go. That's how you find answer for the 37th question. Now number 38, let's look at this. What point does the reviewer make about Charles II in the fourth paragraph? So what point did they make? Now the first option is, he chose to celebrate what was essentially a defeat. Okay. Number B, he misunderstood the motives of his opponents. Number C, he aimed to restore people's faith in the monarchy. Number D, he was driven by a desire to be popular. Okay, so let's quickly have a look at paragraph 4. Paragraph 4 right here. Okay. Charles' adventures after losing the Battle of Worcester hide the uncomfortable truth that whilst almost everyone in England had been appalled by the execution of his father, They had not welcomed the arrival of his son with the Scots army, but had instead firmly bolted, yada yada. Nope, nothing there. Let's look at the end. In 1660, Charles True commissioned the artist John Michael Wright to paint a flying squadron of cherubs carrying an oak tree to heavens on ceiling of his bedchamber. Okay. It is hard to imagine many other kings marking the lowest point in their life so enthusiastically, or indeed pulling off such an escape in the first place. We have our answer right here. Let's quickly go back to our options. So you see how here it says that he chose to celebrate what was essentially a defeat. We're looking at paragraph 4. Here we go. So, it is hard to imagine many other kings marking the lowest point in their life so enthusiastically. So basically, even though it was King Charles like the lowest point in his life, he actually had people making paintings of it. He had people creating canvases and just getting it blown out in proportion so that he could tell the story. Essentially, that's him celebrating his defeat. So that's the point that the reviewer made here. So there you go. That's the answer right there. Now, number 39. What does the reviewer say about Charles Spencer in the 5th paragraph? Number A. His decision to write the book comes as a surprise. B. He takes an unbiased approach to the subject matter. C. The descriptions of events would be better if they included more detail. D. He chooses languages that is suitable for a 21st century audience. So we have 4 options. We've got to find which one is right? So what is the reviewer saying about Charles Spencer in the 5th passage? Now let's have a look. In the 5th passage, here's the 5th passage. Charles Spencer is the perfect person to pass the story on to a new generation. Okay, something being said about Charles Spencer right way. His spacey, readable prose steers deftly clear of modern idioms and elegantly brings to the life the details of the great tale. Okay. He has even-handed sympathy for both the fugitive king and the fierce Republican regime that hunted him, and he succeeds in the desire to explore far more of the background of the story than previous books on the subject have done. Indeed, the opening third of the book is about how Charles True found himself at Worcester in the first place, which for some will be reason alone to read Catch a King. So, 5th paragraph done. Let's quickly go look back at the answers. And, our answer here is basically the unbiased approach. You might be wondering, so how does that come as an answer? So, unbiased approach. The word unbiased. Unbiased means to look at both the sides of the story and not say one is better than the other, but to look at it very objectively. So, when we go back to para 5, right here, he has even-handed. Even-handed means both the parties, keeping them in a balance. Sympathy for both the fugitive king and the fierce Republican regime. So that, that Charles Spencer spoke about the regime as well as the king. So there you go. That's how, that's how there was an unbiased approach for the subject matter. So that's the answer right there. Now, finally, number 40. When the reviewer says the book doesn't quite hit the mark, she is making the point that, okay, so we have to look, doesn't quite hit the mark. And option A is it overlooks the impact of events on ordinary people. B is it lacks an analysis of prevalent views on monarchy. Number C is it omits any references to the deceit practiced by Charles II during his time in hiding. D, it fails to address whether Charles II experiences had a lasting influence on him. So we have 4 options and doesn't quite hit the mark. Okay, so here they didn't give us a paragraph, so where this answer might be. Remember how we mentioned that the information, it flows in an order, and so does the question? So the answer will be in the 6th paragraph, in the final paragraph right here. So let's look at this. The tantalizing question left in the end is that of what it all meant. Would Charles II have been a different king had these 6 weeks never happened? The days and nights spent in hiding must have affected him in some way. Did the need to assume disguises, to survive on wit and charm alone, to use trickery and subterfuge to escape from tight corners help form him? Our answer is right here. Look at this. It fails to address whether Charles II experienced had a lasting influence on him. And that's what it did, right? Because when we look here, doesn't quite hit the mark. What she is saying is that even though, the book was good, what the author couldn't hit was like, did all the things that, King Charles had to go through, did it help him become a different person? There's no detail about that. So that's how we came to this answer right here. D. It fails to address whether Charles' two experiences had a lasting influence. So there you go. That's pretty much how you would deal with questions like this. So just most importantly, read the instructions, look for keywords and focus on the technique. Just first and last sentence, see if your answer is there. If it isn't, then go for the details in the middle. You'll find something there. I hope you find this useful. If you have any questions about this, drop them in the comments. If you have any friends who are struggling with this, share this video with them. They'll find it useful. I guess we'll see you in the next video. Good luck. See you then.